But anyway, the yeah, we have some relief pitchers to rank. It is our 10th it is our 10th list. Go feel free to check out the 2025 positional ranking playlist on the Above Replacement Radio YouTube channel, where we have all those lists we've already done. But yeah, are we kind of ready to are we are we ready to get into it right away?
Yeah, I think we can just start.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was a tough list. I Let me check how many returners I have from last year while you talk about it.
Yeah. Like all these lists, this is, what we think they will do in 2025, like ranking them on what we think they will do in 2025. So it's not all completely based on past performance. I know personally, I probably have a couple guys that actually have been top 10 relievers, either last year or over the last 2 years or 3 years, not on this list, just
Hmm.
because maybe there's some signs or some things that indicate to me that they won't be top 10 this upcoming year. So that's how we've kind of approached all the lists. But yeah, what's kind of the breakdown of your list right now?
Yeah, so I actually I don't have my list from last year off the top of my head because I didn't put it in my top 50 notes from last year because I wasn't putting relievers in the top
Hmm.
50, and it's on my school email, which I no longer have access to. So don't have it right now. I'm sure if you go back and watch my list from last year on YouTube, you can figure out what I had. So we'll be kind of figuring that out a little more on the fly. But this was a very difficult list. I had like 15 guys that I wanted to put in my top 10. Obviously that's not how this works though. So I had to put five on the chopping block. It was really hard to do that, but yeah, I think I can live with the list that I made. I guess we'll have to see how it goes during the season.
Yeah, for sure. I know personally I had four returners on this list, which for relief pitcher
Is a lot.
seems
It's
like kind
pretty
of a
good.
lot.
Yeah.
Because starting pitcher I only had two returners. But maybe it's me doubling down on some guys, but yeah, I do have confidence that four of the guys I put last year um will also be productive, have top 10 productivity this year. But yeah, without further ado, did you want to get into your number 10?
Yeah, I would like to get into my number 10. This was, like I said, a very difficult list. There's a few guys that you might have very high on your list that I don't have. Doesn't mean that I don't think that they're good. It's just that, like I said, this is a very difficult list to make. At number 10, I have Johan Duran from the Minnesota Twins, a guy that every year, like he'll get hit a couple of times. I still just never understand how it actually happens. He had a 3.64 ERA, which is the worst that he's had in any season so far. But all the underlying stuff was still there for him. The strikeout rate, although it did go down, was at 28.9%. The whiff rate was above 30%. Obviously, he's known for his velocity, right? I mean, he throws very hard, both on his four seam fastball, which averages 100.5 miles per hour, and also his splitter, which averages at 97 miles an hour. That also had a negative 18 launch angle last year. So the thing that I like about Yohan Duran most predominantly, I think the thing that really puts him on this list for me ahead of so many other guys is the ground ball rate. It's been above 60% every single year. He's had a negative launch angle in each year of his career. That's a very consistent thing that you see out of him, and I like that. That's something that he has, very consistently. This year, he did actually have his lowest average exit velocity against, his lowest barrel rate. That's kind of been the thing for him, is every now and then he does get touched up. And, the ERA might suggest that it happened a lot more this year. That's not quite the case. The expected ERA was 2.76, considerably lower. Obviously, I would like to see the strikeout rate go back above 50%. One thing that, or excuse me, 30%. Another thing that is encouraging, the walk rate went down last year. It was 6% in 2022 and 9.8% in 2023. So we really went into last year kind of figuring out which was it, and it was 6.6%. So thankfully, the walk rate was closer to 2022. Going into his, combination of strikeout prowess and ground ball rate, since 2015, Johan Duran is the only pitcher to log at least 3 seasons with a ground ball rate above 60% and a whiff rate above 30%. That's a minimum guys with at least 200, or excuse me, 150 plate appearances against in a season. So, like I said, very consistent on the walks and ground ball rate. No one does it like him in terms of those particular things. And for that reason, he is making my top 10 list. Just scraping it. He is my number 10 reliever this year.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and yeah, referencing kind of how there might be a lot of variance between our lists. Like, with shortstop we had the same 10 because there's only 10 starting shortstops or there's 30 starting shortstops in Major League Baseball. There's going to be over 200 relievers on opening day rosters this year. So there's a lot to choose from. And that's why it can be very difficult to choose. But my number 10, I'm staying in Minnesota, but going with a different member of that bullpen, and it is Griffin Jax.
The
Um,
2022 Mercy Award winner.
yes, yes, that was when it was introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, check out the highlight reel of all the game day zone 5 pitches that were completely ignored by the batters he was facing. Um, But Griffin Jax is heading into his age 30 season, and he's definitely coming off a career year. Among 169 qualified relievers in MLB last year, he ranked second in FIP, fifth in strikeout minus walk rate, and 10th in strikeout rate. He was also 99th percentile in expected ERA, 99th percentile in chase rate, 98th percentile in whiff rate, 97th percentile in strikeout rate, 89th percentile in walk rate, and 91st percentile in fastball velocity. Um, Along with that, he also had a 24% sweet spot rate against, an 18% line drive rate against. And out of 315 pitchers with 150 plus batted balls against in 2024, Jax had the second lowest sweet spot rate against and the eighth lowest line drive rate against. So, along with getting strikeouts at a very high rate, walks at a very low rate, he also has a very, very low quality of contact against him. Very, very impressive. And then he did all that in 71 innings pitched, which is a lot. Definitely on the higher end for relievers, guys who make zero starts. Um, but yeah, like I'm not putting him higher because his improvement was so drastic that I have to expect that he will settle somewhere between his 2023 and 2024 season. For example, he had the second best year-to-year change in whiff rate among 226 qualifiers. More often than not, the pitchers with the best year-to-year changes will find a settling point the next year. Same thing with worst year-to-year changes. Usually things like that don't really stick. So I figure he's gonna probably settle somewhere, but if he finds a way to do this 2 years in a row, he'll surely probably be top 5 next year. So Griffin Jack's getting my number 10 spot. Who do you have at number 9?
Yeah, very nicely said, Chris. At number 9, I have a guy that I think is very similar to Duran. In the same, I'll be talking a lot about the same skill sets when talking about Andres Munoz from the Seattle Mariners. We another guy that maybe had, I don't want to say an off year, definitely wasn't an off year, but maybe just not as loud as in previous years, just given uh, a lot of different things. The Mariners weren't a playoff team last year or whatever, but I think sneaky, he might have had the best season of his career so far. A whiff rate nearly 40%, a strikeout rate at 33.2%, the second best he's had in his career. But above that, a 178 expected batting average against, an 86 mile per hour average exit velocity against, and a 54% barrel rate, all making up a 2.94 expected ERA in 59 and a third innings pitched, nearly pretty close to the 65 that he pitched in his career high of 2022. So I think Andres Munoz, very quietly had himself another really nice season last year. All three of the pitches that he threw last year had a batting average against below 175, and all of the pitches he threw had a slugging percentage below 350 last year, and all of them also had a launch angle below at or below 6 degrees. He threw a slider as his number one most used pitch, mostly to lefties, which is interesting because I think righties, you probably see them throw more, sliders against righties but Andres Munoz actually threw them more to lefties. It had a 48.5% whiff rate, a 6-degree launch angle, an 84 mile per hour average exit velocity against, giving him a 2.3 run value against on his primary pitch. Obviously, a good primary is necessary. His secondaries make up for it as well. And similar to Duran, like I mentioned, since 2015, Andres Munoz is the only pitcher to have at least 3 seasons with a ground ball rate above 50% and a whiff rate above 37% in at least 150 plate appearances against. So, a little lighter on the ground balls, but heavier on the whiffs. I really like seeing that out of Andres Munoz. He's obviously much like Duran, a very electric pitcher, gets a lot of velocity, averages 98, 97 on the four-seamer and the sinker. Obviously, the slider, like I mentioned, gets very good movement, 35 inches of drop, 5 inches of glove side movement, both of them above league average. So that's obviously, you always love to see electric movement out of guys like that. And that's exactly what you see out of Munoz. That being said, having him, I believe, return to my list. I think I had him last year. He is my number 9 reliever for this year.
Yeah. I think I re-listened last year to last year's, and I think you had him either 8 or 9, so um kind of matching where he was last year for you. Um my number 9, and I'll preface this by saying, with relievers in 99% of scenarios, you kind of have to have like a dominant or at least really, really impressive season, the year before to get on this list. But I kind of make an exception with my number 9, and I'm talking about Edwin Diaz, who
Mm-hmm.
is my number 2 reliever heading into 2024. And he is heading into his age 30 season. And yeah, he definitely had a down year by his standards in 2024. But he still showed he can be an elite reliever based on some of the under the surface numbers. Among the 169 qualified relievers in MLB last year, Edwin Diaz ranked second in strikeout rate, fourth in strikeout minus walk rate, and sixth in xFIP. He was also 97th percentile or higher in expected ERA, expected batting average against, average exit velocity against, hard hit rate, whiff rate, and strikeout rate. 97th percentile or higher in all of those. And he was also 94th percentile in average fastball velocity. So he didn't really fall off too much there. So yeah, I just kind of, observing a reliever, if the strikeouts are there and the walks aren't too high, I still can, feel really highly about Edwin Diaz. And yeah, with a couple less homers, I think he will be an elite reliever again, considering where those strikeouts and walks are and how electric his stuff still is. It's just he had his home runs ballooned up last year, and that caused, all his rate numbers to go up. And he definitely didn't have a top 10 season among relievers last year, but I expect him to in 2025. Who do you have at number 8?
Yeah, I thought Edwin Diaz was going to be, he was my number 11. I'll just reveal that now. I don't have him on my list, but I felt the worst about leaving him off out of anyone. And I thought you were going to have him. I wouldn't have been surprised if you had him at like top 5, top 3 even, because he is, I think he goes up a ceiling to be that good, certainly. So I'm glad that we're pretty close to being on the same page on him as, a fringe top 10 guy right now. My number 8 is probably the biggest breakout season we saw out of any reliever last year. Not only, did he come out of legitimately nowhere, but he unquestionably had a top 10 season, and I think has forced himself into consideration on this list, even just after one season. That is Cade Smith from the Cleveland Guardians. What a season he had last year, most notably a 28 run value on his four-seam fastball, which gave him a 3.5 run value per 100, and I believe the most run value of any pitch in the majors last year. That is correct. Yeah, coming from a reliever on that is pretty insane because you're obviously throwing less pitches. It's an accumulated stat, which just goes to show you how insane Cade Smith's four seamer was. He threw it 806 times, had 110 batted balls against it, and 203 plate appearances end on his four seamer. A 174 batting average against with a 191 expected batting average, a 253 slugging with 311 X slug. So a 30% whiff rate, which is also pretty insane. Um, yeah, so I mean, it was a really solid season for him. Obviously, the strikeout rate was elite. The expected ERA was below 260. There was just a lot of really good stuff that we saw out of Cade Smith last year. Not only does he have the fastball, but it is complemented by a split finger, very similar to Duran. That one had a 29.9% whiff rate, additionally an 88 mile per hour average exit velocity against, and a 4 launch angle against. Even the ground ball rate was pretty good against Cade Smith's four seamer. You're not supposed to get a lot of ground balls on four seamers. He had a 14-degree average launch angle, which is significantly below the league average. So that was really good to see as well. Only one home run allowed all year in 75 and a third innings pitched in the regular season. Postseason was a bit different, but that's all right. Additionally, the walk rate was very much there as well. He stayed in the zone a pretty good amount of 56.2% zone rate. The league average is 48.7%. And also a zone contact rate below 75%. The league average is 82%. So, not only, he got a lot of swing and miss in the zone, he got a lot of swing and miss out of the zone. And the four seamer, going more into it, the 3.5 run value per 100 on Cade Smith's four seamer in 2024 is the highest among the 1545 seasons, the 1,545 seasons since 2008, with at least 754 seamers thrown. And it is the only one with a run value per 100 above 3. And he was at 3.5. So it was substantially, given that kind of volume, the best four seamer we've seen in any season since 2008. Really solid season for Cade Smith, and I'm looking forward to seeing more next year. He is my number 8 reliever on this list.
Right, right. My number eight, I don't really have too many notes on because just the standard numbers really speak for themselves and why
Mhm.
I'm putting him on this list. I'm talking about Jeff Hoffman, who
Ooh.
has um, who's pitched the last few years with the Phillies, and he is now going to be pitching for the Blue Jays. And he is heading into his age 32 season. He has a 2.28 ERA and 2.54 FIP in 118 and two-thirds innings pitched over the last 2 years. And out of 97 relievers to throw 100 plus innings over the last 2 years, Hoffman ranks sixth in ERA, sixth in strikeout rate, fourth in strikeout minus walk rate, and third in FIP. So he actually has been better than the eighth best reliever over the last 2 years. Just there's probably some newcomers or guys who really emerged last year that I have a little bit more faith in heading into 2025. Also, he ranks fifth in FWAR among those relievers, among all relievers, over the last 2 years. So yeah, he's kind of made a name for himself, been a staple. I know those don't include playoff statistics, but I'm looking at the larger sample sizes here, and looking at the larger sample sizes, he's been an excellent reliever. So I'm going to put him at number eight. Who do you have at number seven?
Yeah, at number 7, I have your number 10, the first guy that we have both agreed to talk about so far. Talking about Griffin Jacks of the Minnesota Twins, who, yes, had a very solid, another kind of breakout season in 2024. Very good four seamer, very good off speed, very good breaking ball. This guy threw 5 pitches this year, all of them at least 50 times, at least 6% of the time. I know that's not a large rate, but certainly 5 pitches at that kind of volume for any reliever is unique in itself. And all of them were very good this year. They all had a run value per 100 of at least 1.0, which that's obviously strong for any pitch. Nonetheless, 5 of them that you're throwing at a decent enough volume. His sweeper was his most commonly used pitch. Very common thing for the Twins, it appears, because they really love sweepers, and it certainly pays off for them, and it definitely did. In the case of Griffin Jacks, his sweeper had an 83 mile per hour average exit velocity last year, also an 8-degree launch angle. You don't always see high ground ball rates on sweepers, but you did out of Griffin Jacks, and obviously a 45% whiff rate. He had a 45% whiff rate or higher on 2 different pitches last year, his sweeper and his changeup, which was his third most used pitch. So not only did we see that, we saw, high ground ball rates of 52% ground ball rate out of Griffin Jacks last year, which was really awesome. We saw the high strikeout rates. We saw a chase rate nearing 40%, which is 99th percentile. That was also pretty awesome to see as well. Um, Griffin Jax had a 36.9% called strike and whiff rate in 2024, which was the highest among the 271 pitchers with at least 1,000 pitches thrown. So that's pretty simple, but also meaningful, right? I mean, the called strike and whiff rate nearing 40%. No one else did it like that, given the amount of volume. So that was awesome. He also had a 71% first strike rate in per first pitch strike rate in 2024, 10 points above the average, which is pretty cool. He's getting into the zone early. When he's not getting in the zone, he's getting a lot of chase, 38.3%, one of the highest in the league. A chase contact rate below 40% is also quite remarkable, given the league average is 57%. So yeah, with Griffin Jax, it's a large variety of pitches. It's a large variety of skill sets. And it's a large variety of just effective results, whether you look at it via batted balls, whether you look at via strikeouts, walks, whatever. He's doing all of it very well. And to me, it was good enough for, as a breakout season to put him number 7 on the list.
Yeah, right, right, right. My my number seven is someone who I also think has been better than the seventh best reliever over the last 2 years, but there's some signs that make me think, he won't be above that. So I'm sticking him at number seven, and he was actually my number seven last year as well. I'm talking about Tanner Scott, who just signed a 4-year, $72 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's spent the last couple, he spent last year, started with the Marlins, and then eventually got traded to the Padres for the final couple months. He's heading into his age 30 season, and he leads all relievers in F4 over the last 2 years. And among the 97 relievers with 100 plus innings thrown over the last 2 years, he ranks second in ERA and FIP, and he ranks fourth in home runs per nine. He has been 97th percentile or higher in average exit velocity each of the last 2 years. And out of 249 total pitchers to throw 2,000 plus pitches over the last 2 years, Scott has the lowest average exit velocity against. His barrel rate also has been 92nd percentile or higher each of the last 2 years. And out of 249 pitchers, he has the fifth lowest barrel rate over those last 2 years. And yeah, so Scott's specialty has definitely been getting soft contact along with a pretty high strikeout rate. But what does alarm me is that in 2024 he had a 3-year low in strikeout rate and a career low in whiff rate, and also increased his walk rate 4.4 percentage points from 2023 to 2024. With Tanner Scott, he definitely had a career resurgence in 2023, and it largely stemmed from him cutting his walk rate down. And it seemed like kind of the barrier between him being an average reliever and an elite reliever was that walk rate. So him kind of returning to old ways and walking more batters does alarm me a little bit. So that's why I don't have him a bit higher, even if he has been one of the better relievers in baseball over the last 2 years. But still, I trust him to be very productive and be a very good closer for the Dodgers, which is why I have him at number seven. Who do you have at number six?
Yeah, at number 6, I have a guy that did not pitch in Major League Baseball at all last year. So maybe an ambitious pick to put him that high, but I think people might be forgetting just how ridiculously good he was over the last 2 years, and especially in 2023. I'm talking about Felix Bautista from the Baltimore Orioles, who will be making his return from Tommy John surgery this year. That's something you should be very excited about, because in 2023, he struck out 110 batters over 61 innings, a 46.4% strikeout rate, and a 44.3% whiff rate. On top of that, getting a lot of pop-ups, a 9.1% pop-up rate, and just an electric four-seamer, right, with a 37.8% whiff rate. But the 37.8% whiff rate he had on his four-seamer in 2023 doesn't match up quite with the 60.2% whiff rate that he had on his splitter in 2023. He threw it 247 times. It had an 86 mile per hour average exit velocity against, but that's, when it was getting hit, which is very rare. 52 strikeouts and 23 batted balls allowed on his splitter in 2023. Think about that. 52 strikeouts, 23 batted balls. That's outstanding. So that's very fun. I'm very excited to see him come back this year. Just again, as a reminder, he had a 140 expected batting average against in 2023, which was the lowest among the 1,980 seasons since 2019, with at least 750 pitches thrown. So Felix Bautista had a historically good 2023. He was one of the best, maybe the best reliever in the league that year, and he will be making his long-awaited return to the mound. The walks are a struggle. The ground balls are a struggle for sure. I don't really care much about the ground balls, even if the Orioles are moving the fence in, because he does throw the four seamer a lot of the time, and that's just a natural thing that's going to happen. As for the walks, if you're walking a lot of people and not getting hit, it doesn't really matter that much. And it didn't for him last year or 2 years ago, as he put up a 148 ERA with an 11% walk rate. So I'm keeping him in my top 10 list this year. He's going in my number 6 spot, despite missing all of last year.
Right, right. I mean, he's certainly earned it based on his 2023, and his 2022 is also very good. My number six is someone who I'm sure probably got reliever of the year last year. I forget. But it is Emmanuel Clase. I had him at number six as well last year. Um, and he is heading into his age 27 season. He has a 1.90 ERA and 2.56 FIP over the last 2 years. And out of 97 relievers to throw 100 plus innings over the last 2 years, he leads in ERA and he ranks fifth in FIP. Last year, he very, very notably put up a 0.61 ERA, and he also had a 2.22 FIP and 2.47 expected ERA. Out of 169 qualified relievers in 2024, Clase led in ERA and ranked sixth in FIP. He was also in the 92nd percentile in average exit velocity against, and was 95th percentile or higher in expected ERA, chase rate, walk rate, barrel rate, hard hit rate, and ground ball rate. If you go to his baseball savant page, it's really just all red for him. And you may wonder why I did not move him up the list despite him, having such a very low ERA and a great season. The reason why I'm not moving him up the list is because he didn't improve as drastically under the surface. I know his ERA went from over 3 to under 1, but under the surface it stayed relatively similar. And he realistically should not have had nearly as low an ERA as he did. Clase had the lowest batting average against on hard hit balls out of the 380 pitchers with 50 plus hard hit balls allowed, and had the third luckiest difference in batting average and expected batting average on hard hit balls. He also had the second luckiest difference between WOBA and expected WOBA among 374 pitchers on all pitches, on all batters faced. So second luckiest out of 374 there. But yeah, obviously his under the surface numbers were still really good. It just didn't indicate that he should have had, a 0.61 ERA season. So but yeah, I mean, had a very good season, but I don't expect that ERA to be nearly as low in 2025. So Emmanuel Clase gets my number six spot. Who's your number five?
At number 5, I'd say the guy that is probably the most underrated reliever in the league. I went into this list thinking I would maybe put him in my top 10, and he ended up being my number 5 because everywhere I looked, I was just so blown away by, what he did last year. I know that he was in some cases even better in 2023, but I think it's just worth noting how good that this guy is. I'm talking about Raisel Iglesias from the Atlanta Braves, who put together an outstanding, quiet but outstanding season for the Braves last year. It was a season where a lot of guys on the Braves, especially on offense and even to some degree on the pitching side, experienced some regression from 2023. Raisel Iglesias went in the opposite direction. The strikeout rate did go down a bit, but the whiff rate stayed above 30%. The chase rate was outstanding. The chase rate was at 37%, kind of in line with where he had been previously. Additionally, he put together a season with a 224 expected ERA. That was 99th percentile. So, I mean, one of the very best in the entire league. He did up his ground ball rate by 2% this year. He also lowered his line drive rate by nearly 4%, which is always good. He also decreased his pull rate against from 41.9% in 2023 to 33.1% in 2024. He changed a lot of his some of his arsenal last year. He upped the usage on his slider and his sinker, both of which had batting average against below 165 and a slugging against below 280. And everything that he was throwing, he was still throwing more, like his changeup and his four seamer, still were very excellent. All of his pitches had a run value per 100 above 1.5. His changeup at 2.8 was his highest, also his most used pitch. Regarding that changeup, it was a 148 expect batting average against, a 193 slugging against, a 4% or 4-degree launch angle, and an 80.7 mile per hour average exit velocity with a 32.6% whiff rate. Just outstanding metrics against the changeup there. And again, one thing that Iglesias did was really dominate the sort of fringe part of the strike zone. And on the Savant, it's called the shadow zone. It's kind of the edge of where I guess the line of the strike zone is. I think a lot of, battles are kind of won in and out of that zone. Are you getting chases? Are you getting some calls, right? Are you getting good results on the places where it's harder to hit the ball rather than down the middle? And Iglesias had a 5.4 run value per 100 in that shadow zone in 2024, which was tied for the highest among the 4,607 seasons since 2008, with at least 400 pitches thrown in that zone. So, the place where a lot of battles between batters and pitchers are won and lost, Iglesias dominated more than anyone else in the pitch tracking era last year. So he is my number 5 reliever. I'm very excited to see another hopefully excellent season out of him in a much needed bounce back year for the Braves.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. My number 5 is he might have also been reliever of the year last year, but he was, I think he was in contention at least, and that is on the National League side. I'm talking about Ryan Helsley, of the St. Louis Cardinals. Ryan Helsley was my number 4 last year, and he's 5 heading into 2025. He is heading into his age 30 season, and over the last 3 years, he has a 1.83 ERA and 2.35 FIP. And out of 86 pitchers with 150 plus innings over the last 3 years, Helsley ranks second in ERA and first in FIP. And then out of the 97 pitchers with 100 plus innings pitched over the last 2 years, he ranks third in ERA and also first in FIP. Where the alarm bells might go off is his strikeout rate dropped 5.9 percentage points from 2023 to 2024. But I'm not as concerned about it as I normally would be because his whiff rate and called strike and whiff rate actually increased from 2023 to 2024. So it just kind of tells a sign that that drop will probably not be as present in 2025. I'm sure he'll have a settling point or maybe even just get back to that 2023 level as far as the strikeout rate goes. Also, that whiff rate was in the 97th percentile in 2024, and out of 374 pitchers to throw 750 plus pitches in 2024, Helsley's called strike and whiff rate ranked third. And yeah, he was also 94th percentile in expected ERA, 97th percentile in barrel rate, and 99th percentile in fastball velocity. I mentioned that barrel rate being 97th percentile. Over the last 2 years, he's only allowed 9 barrels and 4 home runs. This is someone who's thrown over 100 innings, only 9 barrels and 4 home runs allowed. And out of the 97 pitchers with 100 plus innings pitched over the last 2 years, Helsley has the third lowest home runs per 9 against. So, a guy with a 97th percentile whiff rate, very high called strike and whiff rate, and very low home runs per 9 against, that's going to lead to dominance. And that's what we've kind of seen out of Ryan Helsley for the last 3 years. So yeah, he gets my number 5 spot. Who do you have at number 4?
Yeah, at number four, I have the person that you put at number seven. I do have Tanner Scott, and I am a little bit higher on him than you seem to be. I understand the walks are what they are. A 12.2% walk rate is never encouraged from a pitcher. To be honest, that probably kept me from putting him in the top three. But the contact against is really what does it for me. It's not even the high strikeout rates, the high whiff rate, the high chase rate. All that is fantastic, but I'm kind of enamored by the contact that Tanner Scott gets against him. It was an 84.3 mile per hour average exit velocity against last year. It was also a 79.5 mile per hour average exit velocity against his four seam fastball, which was his most used pitch. Additionally, it was a ground ball rate above 50%, a fly ball rate under 20%, and a pop up rate of 8.2%. So I am very encouraged by just by the contact that comes against Tanner Scott. Both of his pitches, his four seamer and his slider, have very good movement. They both drop, 2 inches more than the average of those pitches in baseball. His slider also moves more, horizontally than the average slider in baseball, 3 inches more to be exact. So I really like, pitchers with good movement. I think that kind of leads to the stellar contact against him. 3.2% of fly balls allowed by Tanner Scott in 2024 were pulled. That's not his pulled fly ball rate among all batted balls. No, that is the pull rate on his fly balls. It was 3.2%. He allowed one pulled fly ball the entire year last year, which was, I believe, to Jacob Stallings in his first outing with the Padres. It was a home run. But again, only one in 72 regular season innings last year between the Marlins and the Padres. That 3.2% pull rate on fly balls was the seventh lowest among the 6,815 seasons since 2008, with at least 25 fly balls allowed. So I really like the contact against Tanner Scott. It's some of the best in the league. And I think it'll play in any ballpark. I think it'll play in Dodger Stadium, even if it is more hitter friendly than either Miami or San Diego. And he is going in my number 4 spot.
Right, right. My number 4 is someone you've already mentioned. He was not on my list last year, and I think he was your number 8. Talking about Cade Smith of the Cleveland Guardians. Cade Smith is heading into his age 26 season. He played his first Major League Baseball season in 2024, and he put up a 1.91 ERA, 1.40 FIP, 2.55 expected ERA, and 30% strikeout minus walk rate in 75 and a third innings pitched. He led all relievers in F4 and led all qualifying relievers in FIP last year. And among the 169 qualified relievers last year, he also ranked third in home runs per nine and third in strikeout minus walk rate. He only allowed one home run in the regular season, partially because he only allowed 19% of his fly balls to be pulled. However, he did, he allowed 3.6 expected home runs. That's based on the average ballpark. It seemed like he seemed to have some luck in allowing a lot of his deep fly balls in more pitcher friendly ballparks. And maybe that naturally happens in AL Central a little bit more, but still, it would be naturally expected that he gives up a few more home runs this upcoming year. It would be a real shocker if he allowed one home run again. So yeah, I would expect, at least that FIP to go up. I don't think that FIP's going to be 1.40 next year,
Mm-hmm.
but I expect it to be kind of, I expect it to be in the low twos, which I would expect to be, probably a top 4 season for a reliever next year, especially in the workload that Cade Smith seems to be getting, through 75 innings last year, which is not all these relievers can say that on this list. So yeah, Cade Smith gets my number 4 spot. Who do you have at number 3?
Yeah, so at number 3, I have a guy that is switching teams this year, going from Milwaukee to the Bronx. I'm talking about Devin Williams, now of the New York Yankees, who has been, I mean, kind of approaching like legacy status on this list, right? I know we've only been doing it 2 years, but I would imagine if we've been doing this list since 2020, he probably would have been on both of our lists each year because he's just been dominant. A 1.83 ERA in 235 career innings with 375 career strikeouts is remarkable. And I mean, it's a shame he's going into his 30s now because if he started doing this earlier, like we might legitimately be talking about like Hall of Fame as a reliever because that's insane. One of the best things about it's not really new at this point, but the updated Savant profiles is that for pitchers, you can see the movement chart when you look at their page, and it shows like the average versus their pitches. And Devin Williams' changeup is just in a different stratosphere from what is shown as the average on his chart. Since he debuted in 2020, Devin Williams has thrown 347 changeups with at least 40 inches of drop and 20 inches of arm side movement. Nobody else has thrown more than 79 such pitches in that span, and Devin Williams has thrown 347 of them. It's the airbender for a reason. Pitching Ninja didn't just give him that nickname because it looked cool, because it had the math to back it up. And last year, like every other year, his airbender was a really solid pitch. It had 2.1 run value per 100, a 162 batting average against, a 216 slugging against, with even better expected numbers on both fronts. It had a 51.2% strikeout rate, a 48.8% whiff rate. He did throw it a bit less last year, but I kind of suspect the Yankees are going to bring that back. He did deal with some injuries last year and missed a lot of the season, so I would imagine stuff like that is probably just small sample stuff, not much to really think too deeply into. Um, Obviously, it's one of the best pitches in baseball. It had a 77.7 mile per hour average exit velocity last year on 15 batted balls, uh, to go along with 22 strikeouts. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like in a Yankee uniform. And I'm putting Devin Williams, who unfortunately uh, shaved his beard a little too early, given that he didn't have to, in my top three for this year. He was my number two last year, so he's staying close to where he was before.
Indeed, indeed. My number three is someone who was not on my list last year because we knew he was not going to pitch last year. He was your number six on this list. I'm talking about Felix Bautista of the Baltimore Orioles. He's heading into his age 30 season, and he was the best reliever of the 2023 season. And then he missed all of last year after Tommy John surgery. But in 2023, he led the 162 qualified relievers in FIP, strikeout rate, and strikeout minus walk rate. And since entering the league in 2022, he has a 1.85 ERA, 216 ERA plus, a 2.42 FIP, 40% strikeout rate, and 30% strikeout minus walk rate. And in 2022 and 2023 combined, among 111 relievers with 100 plus innings pitched, Batista led in strikeout rate and strikeout minus walk rate and ranked sixth in FIP. And kind of a theme looking at the relievers I look at is, kind of looking at strikeout rate and strikeout minus walk rate first, because those are the numbers that usually stick and stay the most consistent throughout someone's career, or at least over the course of many years. And Felix Bautista, when he was pitching, was at the top of that list. So, last year I put Edwin Diaz at number two, after he was the best reliever of 2022. So with Felix Bautista, I'm putting him at number three after he was the best reliever um, in uh, in 2023. So, it I guess maybe it's a high standard to put him at coming off Tommy John surgery, but I really enjoyed what he was able to do in 2023. So he gets my number three spot. Who do you have at number two?
Yeah, at number two, I have the guy that you put at number six, talking about Emmanuel Clase. I do agree with you that I don't think he's going to replicate a 0.61 ERA next season. I know that, I mean, call me a skeptic, but yeah, I think his ERA will be higher than that. But that's okay because even if it was doubled, he still probably would have been reliever of the year because that's a 1.22 ERA over 70 4 in the third innings is still ridiculous. Much like Tanner Scott, I put him higher on the list because I really like the contact against him. It was only a 3.6% barrel rate, an 86.5 mile per hour average exit velocity, a 57.8% ground ball rate, a 29.7% hard hit rate to go along with very good strikeout to walk numbers. Walk numbers, especially, were solid 3.7%. He's a guy that obviously lived in the zone. 54.6% of his pitches were in the strike zone last year. And even when he wasn't in the zone, he was getting a lot of swings, a 36.8% chase rate. Again, talking about Devin Williams and his changeup movement. Emmanuel Clase's cutter has some good movement and also just some excellent velocity as well. Since 2021, Clase has thrown 1,119 cutters with a velocity of at least 100 miles per hour. He is one of just 3 pitchers that have done that even once, and no one else has done it more than 468 times. Over the last 4 years, it is him, Camilo Doval, and Graham Ashcraft that have done it even once, and Clase has done it 1,119 times. So yeah, I really like the ground ball rate. I think Cleveland's defense obviously suits him very well, clearly because he had a 0.61 ERA last year, but he's had a ground ball rate above 56% in every season that he's pitched in the big leagues. To go along with that, very good strikeout to walk numbers, and low average exit velocity as well. So pretty much everything. Of course, I would like the strikeouts to be higher, but that's asking for a little too much, I think, because he's already very, very good. So I'm putting Emmanuel Clase in my number 2. I really like everything about him. And yeah.
Yeah. My number 2 is someone who definitely emerged on the scene this past year, especially. I'm talking about Mason Miller of the Athletics. Mason Miller is heading into his age 25 season, and after being, a hybrid starter reliever in 2023, he pitched his first season as an exclusive reliever in 2024. He threw 65 innings and put up a 2.49 ERA, 2.18 FIP, and 1.77 expected ERA, and 42% strikeout rate, and 33% strikeout minus walk rate. And out of 169 qualified relievers, he ranked 5th in FIP and led in strikeout rate, led in strikeout minus walk rate, and xFIP. He was also in the 96th percentile in average exit velocity against, 82nd percentile in barrel rate against, and 100th percentile in expected ERA, expected batting average against, whiff rate, strikeout rate, and average fastball velocity. He averages about 101 on that fastball. So, looking at Mason Miller, I mean, he was the best at getting strikeouts, and having a good strikeout minus walk rate last year. And then along with that, preventing walks and striking out batters, 96th percentile in average exit velocity again. So it's not like when hitters are making contact, they're making good contact. They're actually making some of the worst contact out there. So yeah, Mason Miller gets my number 2 spot. That ERA was 2.49, but I expect that to be even lower this upcoming year based on some of the underlying things. Who do you have at number 1?
Yeah, at number 1, this is where I put Mason Miller of the Athletics. And yeah, it was a strong breakout season, some of the best player to watch activity from us in 2024. It was an obvious pick, but I mean, the way that it turned out, better than we could have expected, I think validates our like for Mason Miller. It was an outstanding, probably like a 90th percentile outcome season for him last year. And I think that ceiling rises even more just with how dominant he was and how much, room for improvement there shows to be. A 41.8% strikeout rate, a 40.1% whiff rate, a 37.4% chase rate. All of the stuff that is more on his stuff is really good. Obviously, the velocity is what he's known for, but his slider is perhaps maybe the better pitch. It had a 140 batting average against last year with a 0.98 expected batting average, a 186 slugging with a 140 slug against, an 83 mile per hour average exit velocity, a 47.2% whiff rate. Additionally, Mason Miller had a 29.3% pull rate against him, which is, I guess, natural when you're throwing the ball 103 miles an hour. Guys can't really time it up to get ahead of it like that, which is pretty cool. A 177 expected ERA last year. And like you mentioned, good contact against him. The barrel rate was very low at just 5.7%. The average exit velocity was at 86.1 miles per hour. And last year, Mason Miller joined 2022 Edwin Diaz and 2021 Jacob DeGrom as the only pitchers since 2015 to post a whiff rate and strikeout rate above 40% and an expected WOBA below 220, which his was at 206. And that's a minimum 200 plate appearances against in a season. I'm very excited for another year of Mason Miller. I think, just given his stuff, given the fear that I would imagine facing him is, uh, he's going to be the best reliever again next year. So he is my number one.
Right, right. My number one is defending his title as my number one reliever heading into 2024, and that is Devin Williams. Devin Williams is, with him for me, I don't have to get too analytical because the numbers speak for themselves and they've spoken for themselves
Yeah, for
uh
many, many
for
years.
for a long time. Yeah. He's heading into his age 30 season. And since 2020, he has a 1.70 ERA, 2.24 FIP, and 248 ERA plus in 222 innings pitched. And in the last 3 years, he has not posted an ERA above two, nor a FIP above 2.7. And among the 103 relievers to throw 140 plus innings pitched over the last 3 years, he leads in ERA and FIP. And although he pitched a limited time last year, he put up a 1.25 ERA and a 2.06 FIP. So yeah, like with Devin Williams, I'm sure that I wouldn't be surprised at all if someone has a better reliever, a better season as a reliever this year. But with Devin Williams, I know he's going to be very good this year. I can't say that about every pitcher on this list. We've seen it, 5 years in a row now. He's been a dominant reliever at his worst in the last 5 years. He's had a 2.50 ERA and I think a 2.82 FIP. That was him at his worst in the last 5 years. So there's definitely a possibility that some relievers will have better seasons than Devin Williams this year, but I trust him the most, and I can certainly see him winning reliever of the year, and he probably would have the highest odds this upcoming year just because of how incredibly consistent he's been and how he hasn't really shown any signs of devolving just yet. So
Other than
yeah,
health,
he's
but
been the
yeah.
best reliever, and I expect him to continue that in 2025. Um,
All right. So let's
so
go through our lists now. At
yeah,
number 10, I have
did we want
Johan.
to talk about who we kind of considered?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was Edwin Diaz, it was Ryan Helsley, Jeff Hoffman. Let me pull up the full list here because I had all of them. Josh Hader, Lucas Urseg, uh, Jeff Hoffman, Justin Martinez from the D-backs I really wanted to put, but I just couldn't find room for him. AJ Puck, I considered, Edwin Diaz, Orion Kerkering, Ryan Walker, Ryan Helsley.
Yeah, I was looking at Ryan Walker, Jeremiah Estrada, AJ Puck, and then like a real wild card was Robert Garcia, who just got traded
Yeah,
um
Rangers.
to the Rangers, yeah, for Nathaniel Lowe. He has really good peripherals.
He
Um,
does.
but yeah, 10 through 1.
Yeah, so my number 10 is Johan Duran. My number 9 is Andres Munoz. My number 8 is Cade Smith. My number 7 is Griffin Jacks. My number 6 is Felix Batista. My number 5 is Raisel Iglesias. My number 4 is Tanner Scott. My number 3 is Devin Williams. My number 2 is Emmanuel Clase. And my number 1 is Mason Miller.
Yeah, my number 10 is Griffin Jacks. Number 9, Edwin Diaz. Number 8, Jeff Hoffman. Number 7, Tanner Scott. Number 6, Emmanuel Clase. Number 5 is Ryan Helsley. Number 4, Cade Smith. Number 3, Felix Batista. Number 2, Mason Miller. And number 1, Devin Williams.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does it for relievers, and that does it for positional lists. And we will start our top 50 players in baseball list next
Yes.
week.
Yeah.